Hi, Candida. You and I elected to answer the same question, which is whether attachment theory can help explain abusive behavior. And I find that on most points we are in agreement. I read the material and loved what you had to say about some of the observations that you gleaned from the reading. Some of those were that caregivers have a substantial influence on the behavior and outcomes later in life, depending on what the experience was for the child. I also noted that greater attachment related anxiety often results in a fear of rejection and abandonment, which, as you mentioned, there's a propensity for people to stay in certain relationships because of feelings and experiences that they may have had as infants and children. One of the things that I thought was so interesting was in one of the studies mentioned in the reading material, there were three distinct types of attachment: securely attached, insecure avoidant, and insecure resistant. And what I really determined when I looked at some of the effects of each of those attachment theories is that certain childhood adversities can lead to a higher negative predisposition with deviant types of behavior. So anger and hostility are some emotions that are often attached with that adverse experience, and oftentimes those things through the course of one's life will lead to physical aggression. I also kind of approached the question looking at both the perpetrator and the victim. And so when I looked at the victimization aspect, it was similar to some of the observations that you also made in your video, and that is that, we all are born with a need to have a close emotional connection. And when that's not fulfilled, oftentimes those victims in adulthood are looking for connections, and they fear abandonment. And so I thought I heard you mention that sometimes they're not even sure, or they're not able to identify that the behavior is in fact abusive, and I agree with that as well. One interesting consideration I'd also like to point out is that the disorganized or disoriented attachment, there's this inability to deal with stress. When I think about corresponding emotions with certain attachment theories, it's always interesting to me to see people who have turned out to be well-adjusted human beings, but I can appreciate that the social and cognitive competencies that we would get in a healthier relationship with caregiving, with our caregivers, certainly lends itself to a more well-adjusted adulthood. I really leaned into some of the Bible verses that you shared, and because I have been involved with women's groups that have come from abusive relationships, these women come together, they've been in abusive relationships, and oftentimes they have children from their abuser. And I am going to take some of those Bible verses and share them with that women's group. I would add that I always am interested in knowing what the Bible says about do not fear. And I'd heard this before, but I needed to go look it up again. But the idea of us not being afraid shows up in the Bible more than 300 times. And I find that just to have more of an emphasis from God, that we're supposed to think about how much love he has for us, and he doesn't want us to feel fear. So no matter what a person's childhood circumstances are, I firmly believe that through strong faith and leaning into God, the ability to have a fulfilled life without feeling fear, anxiety, and all of the things that come with a lack of attachment when you're young, can certainly only happen through strong faith. So thank you so much for sharing some of your observations, and I really enjoyed listening to some of what you had to say. Thank you.